Hi everyone, I'm Kelsey Ryan, and this is my classroom discourse analysis presentation. So in my classroom, it is composed of 12 students with a variety of learning abilities. So every student in my classroom does have an individualized education plan, and the maximum number of students that I can have in my classroom is 13 students. I do have kindergarten and first grade. And some of those disabilities range from autism to developmental delays to specific learning challenges. 11 of the 12 students in my classroom are identified as English language learners, and they do receive push and supports from an ESL instructor. And towards the beginning of the year, we did kind of a co-teaching model where we would both co-teach science and social studies together. And then towards the end of the year, it gets difficult with testing and everything. So she comes in when she can to help support. Most of the students in my classroom are considered to be in the entering phase in their English language development or proficiency. And the lesson that I decided to do, so it wasn't in my curriculum, but I decided to just do a social studies lesson about Memorial Day, and we're going to do a KWL chart. So in a KWL chart, it's what the students know already, what they want to learn, and at the end, we look back and we look at what they have learned already. So that towards the end of the lesson, we really look at that W and L column where the students ask their own questions, and then they try to find their own answers. So for phonology, in the first word, so one of my students pronounced memorial as memorial, and the student had difficulty sounding out the syllables in the word memorial. So something that I always do when my students have a word that's tricky for them to say or has a lot of syllables, we'll clap out the syllables together. So we go memorial. And then after that, I'll hold up my fingers and we'll do it again, and we'll count how many syllables are in the word together. So we'll go memorial. And then we say how many claps or how many syllables in the word, and then they're able to tell me 4. Multisyllabic words can be difficult for ELLs to pronounce, so we always practice that as it's needed in the classroom. The student also pronounced the OR phoneme as an sound. And after we discussed the syllables of the word, I modeled the correct phoneme, memorial. In foundational skills, we were learning about the ER, IR, OR, AR, UR, are controlled vowels. And it could have been just something that he had learned and was trying to apply to our discussion in the classroom. So for morphology, this student added the derivational ending ER to the word brave, making it braver. And the use of this ending was not necessary for the statement that the student was trying to make, and this teacher helped assist with the error. So I repeated after her, they did something that was brave instead of saying they did something that was braver, because that didn't make sense in the context of what we were talking about. In the next example, my student added the inflectional, or failed to include the inflectional ending S. So he said, does it have to do with soldier when it's supposed to be, does it have to do with soldiers in order for it to make sense? So after the student said that, I modeled soldiers for him after that. For syntax, I always encourage my students to speak in full sentences, and the student answered the question only saying the last of May, which only gives the what or the subject of the sentence. And in order for the sentence to be grammatically correct, it needs the subject and the verb. So I encourage the student to say, we celebrate Memorial on the last Monday of May, to make it a full sentence, and then we repeated it together. This also leads to lexical rules, which show the proper way we form sentences in the English language. For semantics, so for this one, we were talking about the word brave, and I gave my students an example of a synonym of brave, which could be fearless, because they understand what the word fear means. And we also utilize referential meaning to help understand what the word brave means. Brave isn't really a word that has multiple meanings. It just means that someone could be fearless or a hero. And I gave each of the students in my class an opportunity to describe a time where they felt brave. So some talked about swimming in the pool without their floaties, and some talked about being able to ride a bike without their training wheels. For pragmatics, so the first sentence could be an example of deixis, and in this section of the conversation, if an outside observer were to come into our classroom, it would kind of be difficult for them to understand what we were saying because we were using very general and broad terms like these people and expand on this. And then in this portion of the lesson, I also utilize presupposition because for the word soldier, because I kind of assume that my students already know what that means. We've talked about soldiers in the past. I've done mini lessons on Veterans Day as well. And they know what a soldier is, and they have pretty decent background knowledge about what that is. So most of the questions utilized in this lesson were considered closed questions that didn't really involve higher order thinking, and they had a straightforward answers. But I did allow my students to develop their own questions through the KWL chart, like I mentioned at the beginning. This was directly related to the priority standard of being able to ask and answer questions about a nonfiction text or topic. The only open-ended question that I really asked was, why do you think it's important that we honor these people on this day? And one of my students responded with, they did something that was really brave, and it's important that we honor them and give them the respect that they need because they did something that was really brave. One thing that I would change about this lesson would be to provide my students with more opportunities to discuss with their peers about the questions. I've always really struggled with this, especially as a K-1 and a primary teacher, because it's really difficult for students to have those conversations with each other independently at this age. And it's something that really needs to be taught like at the beginning of the year. So this is something that I definitely want to work on moving forward into next year. I believe that the learning goals were met at the end of the lesson. The lesson objective was to be able to understand why we celebrate Memorial Day, and all of my students were able to ask questions related to the topic and utilize listening skills to answer their own questions. So to conclude, this quote from Demo says, teachers can use discourse analysis not only as a research method for investigating their own teaching practices, but also as a tool for studying interactions among language learners. Learners can benefit from using discourse analysis to explore what language is and how it is used to achieve communicative goals in different contexts. So I think this assignment really helped me to see what I need to work on as a teacher in the different areas of grammar, semantics, syntax, and everything. These are my references, and thank you so much.